Released December 1st, 2022 for the Switch, PS4, PS5, and Xbox One, and earlier on June 9th, 2017 for PC as The Vagrant, by developer OTK Games and Daiko and publisher Rainy Frog. Sword of the Vagrant is a side-scrolling action RPG with a slight Metroidvania feel to it, with a beautiful water paint art style and an overall look that takes me back to the Dreamcast days. Surprisingly deep RPG mechanics and a story, while not the most captivating, still able to hold up well enough to have kept me interested and engaged till the end. Sword of the Vagrant is easily shot up there as one of the best indie games I've played for 2022. Thanks to Rainy Frog for the review key. I haven't invested a lot of time in recent years to certain genres, deep adventure games and RPGs. They simply consume way too many hours, more than I have to spare. So when requesting or accepting game keys, I've made an effort to steer clear. I make certain to choose wisely. I would love to be able to spend countless hours with games like Elden Ring and even Elix 2, which I did review earlier this year. But Elix 2 is one of those games I didn't get to see through to the end. My pile of shame is more shameful than it has any right to be. I'm talking about Skyrim VR, Borderlands 2 VR, the new Tomb Raider trilogy, the RE reboots. The list is never ending. But if I decided to commit the time to these games, I'd probably put out 3, maybe 4 reviews a year. But when I saw 8-Bit Eric do a Let's Play on Sword of the Vagrant, well, let me put it this way, which I probably have many times before on this channel, as I do have a tendency to repeat myself a lot generally. Some games, like the recently released Shadow of the Guild by Guild Studio, are just captivating at first glance, like a beautiful woman. When I saw Eric play Sword of the Vagrant, I was hooked by the visual presentation alone, and then I saw a bit of gameplay and that was it. This key didn't pop up in my inbox. I researched the publisher and requested it, and let me tell you, after playing to the end credits, I have no regrets. The story, it was okay, and this doesn't mean there was anything really wrong with it. But as I played, I was hoping for more in terms of expansion. It starts off with you being ravaged by a storm at sea, washing up ashore in a new land. On arrival, before barely recovering, a damsel in distress attacked by a wild boar calls for help. You assist her. She quickly unloads even more of her burdens on you. You help again, then meet up on a boss character who overpowers you. You're now helped by a powerful witch, who after helping you curses you and forces you to do her bidding. She's a part of an organization known as the Academy, a group with a reputation less than stellar. I'm not going to say much more on the story, as the story is the driving force of all RPGs, and despite my spoiler warning at the beginning of this video, I'm still going to exercise some restraint and leave the rest to you. But what I'm getting at is, the story is all good and well, but my entire time playing, it felt like it was truncated, compressed even. I felt like I was playing part 2 or 3 of a series that I skipped out on the earlier parts. I wanted to learn more about the Academy. I expected there to be some kind of involvement by this mysterious organization, but instead, the story felt bottlenecked, as it only focused on 2 persons from the Academy and your dealings with them. The visuals, like I said earlier, this was the magnet that drew me to this game. A lovely hand-drawn water paint look. This 2D art style reminds me that this here, games like Dragon's Crown, Muramasa and the like, are among my favorite genres, second to isometric action RPGs. The characters are well designed with that exaggerated anime look and are also well animated. The environments, although they could use more animations, particularly in the backgrounds, were still a sight to behold. And again, this here is obviously personal preference, as there are people who have no affinity for this retro art style, but they certainly work for me. Guess you can tell by the sound of my voice, I'm old school and proud of it. Over in the sound department, we have great sound effects, especially for item pickups. That sound you hear when you pick items up makes grabbing loot almost addictive, and all other sound effects are done well. There's unfortunately no voice acting, text only. Voice actors would have really stepped up the presentation by several notches. It's not that I don't like reading, but as with subtitles in movies, I find them more a distraction than anything else, and they do take away from my immersion in any game really. We got grunts, and maybe a few one-liners spoken in Japanese, but that's about it. I found that although for most part the score was good, there were times when it was just way over the top. The music would get downright overwhelming at times, in an even out of place kind of way. I found myself wishing it was toned down on many counts. Luckily, I was able to adjust it in settings, but even then, it felt like there wasn't a sweet spot. It would either end up lower but not low enough, or too low. Then there were times during cutscenes where there would be no music at all, and sometimes no ambient sounds either. So yeah, the music, the overall sound design as a package, if I were to rate it with a numbered score, wouldn't hit anywhere near a 10. Not because any of these compositions were bad, just simply inappropriate at times. Gameplay. Always my favorite part of any review, be it a game I think was good or bad. This is where we talk about what really matters the most. On startup, we've got very few options to tinker with. There's sound volume like I mentioned, and the difficulty options, which range from normal to lunatic. And there's the whistle while you work tutorial we've grown accustomed to, which does a pretty good job of showing you the ropes. We can use campfires and steelers, these stone pillars that pop up out of the ground, as save points, and also prepare meals which act as permanent but replaceable buffs, which I thought was an interesting implementation. You can also learn new ingredients by eating the meals at restaurants or purchasing the recipes. I do wish there was an autosave feature though, as there were many times, including the final boss and its multiple forms, where I could have really used one. Along the way, like I mentioned before, there's lots of looting. Crack open chests for treasures or use keys to open some. Some of these chests that require keys, if you break them open, you'll compromise the items inside. I never figured out how this worked though. I don't think I ever used a key to open one of them, and never saw an option before breaking them open to use a key either. I did collect some gold keys which I was able to trade for rune stones, but never saw that option to use one to open a chest. When you crack a chest open, kill an enemy, or break many other items in the environment, your loot will include mana crystals, potions, weapons, or currency. You use the mana crystals to unlock new abilities on the skill tree, from simple abilities like double jumping to some other really powerful and helpful ones. The rune stones I mentioned can also be found in chests hidden in obscured locations throughout the areas. Mana can be used also to enhance weapons, while runestones are used to enchant them. The enchantments are what determine the elemental attack you'll have for each weapon, be it fire, ice, or lightning. These elements can also be upgraded using the skill tree. There will be branches on the skill tree which are locked and can only be accessed by finding specific items, most of which are in these slightly hidden chests I mentioned. Another way to get some great loot is through the Rift raid mode. You can pay this mysterious owl man a pretty penny and you'll be transported to, I guess, another dimension, where you go up against a relatively hectic battle, but the rewards are worth it. We've also got fast travel points, which are found at the steelers I mentioned. I didn't use these that much, but there were times when they came in real handy. Times like at the final boss, when I was underpowered and needed to do a bit of grinding to get up to par. The boss battles were also pretty good, well thought out. As a player who generally abhors boss battles, I'm going to have to say these were pretty well balanced and designed, with the player in mind, not the entertainment of sadistic developers, even the final boss. It did piss me off with its multiple forms bit, to the point that I almost rage quit. But after taking a break and finding my composure, I remembered I have not sat with an RPG for a while, and one of the key factors or elements of any RPG is patience. Patience for grinding and leveling up. So I fast traveled to the first area, worked my way through, got my mana count up, stocked up on health potions and consumables, and by the time I got back to the final boss, it felt like an entry-level encounter. I took all the forms down with relative ease, and that was that. Roll credits. I found Sword of the Vagrant to be also a pretty balanced experience, and perhaps this is just my way of calling it an easy game, but there was never an enemy encounter or situation that was too hard to get through. Yeah, I got my ass handed to me a few times, not only in some boss encounters, but there were times when even the smaller enemies would come at me in large numbers and give me a run for my money. But after leveling up enough, through a bit of persistence and patience, there will come a time in game, long before endgame territory, that you may even feel a bit overpowered. But this always felt fair and balanced, like when you reached that point of comfort and confidence, it was well earned, well deserved. You may start getting your ass kicked and make an attempt to hit that quick potion shortcut button repeatedly, and you begin to notice these potions aren't doing a damn thing. That's because there's a cooldown required, which can be lessened by activating a specific ability on the skill tree. Very balanced. Sword of the Vagrant is also a pretty linear experience. Yes, it does have that Metroidvania backtracking feel to it I mentioned at the start, but it also tells you where to go most times. The game will stop you from going in a particular direction by blocking your path with a barrier or by letting you know it's not time to go there just yet. So yeah, more linear than free-roaming open world vibe. The map and the navigation system took me a while to get used to. I have to say, this is an odd map design choice. After a while I did get used to it, and learned to appreciate its simplicity, but I couldn't shake the feeling that there was a more efficient way to approach this. I also felt like there should have been a waypoint system and an expanded legends setup, like indicators to where the various vendors are, the restaurant, as I only recall seeing one, and icons to show you where the campfires are separate from the fast travel stealers. But all I saw were save points, bosses, your current location, and your current objective. Since there are no real side quests and the game is pretty linear and straightforward, this wasn't a big deal, but it wouldn't have hurt to have more icons. There are also slight puzzles you may encounter, but nothing to affect the pace, and nothing that may end up frustrating anti-puzzle players like me. Sword of the Vagrant also has a bit of endgame content with a new Game Plus mode and multiple endings. And while I'm more a one and done, see the end credits and never return kind of person, I did enjoy that first boss encounter the second time around. You see, the first boss you fight in this game is unbeatable your first go, as that's what sparks the main story. But on new Game Plus mode, you have all your abilities and skills from your first run, so that boss ends up being a total cakewalk and you're able to see what would have happened if you actually beat it in that first encounter. I appreciated that. As dark an ending as I got for doing so, I still felt somewhat vindicated. I guess the only issue I found with Sword of the Vagrant worth mentioning, and is just a minor peeve really. After you lose to certain bosses, you have to sit through a very lengthy set of still image cutscenes. These are fine and even appreciated, as the message adds even more value to the story and the overall experience. However, the inability to skip them, well, this ended up feeling like watching grass grow, particularly when I was up against a really problematic boss, like the last boss before I leveled up. I lost to this one quite a few times, and to have to sit through what felt like a 5-minute cutscene every time before being able to go again, really got under my skin. I mean, you can speed through the dialogue, but that made it no less of a chore. So this is pretty much it. There may have been a few other things I could have touched on, but this sums it up nicely. Sword of the Vagrant is some of the most fun I've had playing a game all year. I was more than happy to spend the extra time going through it to form this semi-comprehensive review. If there's ever a part 2, which may or may not happen based on how it ended, I'll be all over that as well, like brown on rice. It's just that good and gets my seal of approval. It's priced well and will give you more than your money's worth, if you're into the genre. Great work OTG Games, Daiko and Rainy Frog. Keep 'em coming. AAA games are all well and good, but many times, if you'd like a truly unique experience, one off the beaten path, then the indie scene is where you want to be. Show your support for independent game developers. Most if not all indie games are priced relatively low. Some are even free with the option to donate, so there's really no reason to pass. Thank you for watching. If you like my content, feel free to like, share, comment, subscribe, and hit that notification bell. Now, let's say I found a way to piss you off with this one though. Then hey, we all know where to find the various hate buttons now, don't we? Do what you gotta do to leave this experience feeling vindicated, partner. Either way, I won't hold it against you. Our game is never over.